I want to start this video by apologizing a little bit for the previous video because I did something that I just learned something here is that when a video fails to upload because of a failure in the apparatus, it's very disheartening and discouraging. Yet there's an intention to recapture or recapitulate what was just said. But there's a danger in that because I was trying to enunciate so much of what I had been able to enunciate in the previous video within the limitations of the clock. But I was actually rushing it, and actually some of those statements should not be rushed because it's sensitive matters that I'm dealing with. So if the previous video was disagreeable to you because of how I was treating that subject in those statements, I apologize because I was rushing that and it shouldn't be rushed. But to clearly enunciate what I'm saying is that what I meant to say is that human beings are social beings. So all of our experiences, the greatest of experiences, even if they're personal, like say tasting what's called enlightenment or nirvana or satori, stuff like that. There's a social component to it. I had picked that up in a book called by Daisetsu Suzuki, by Daisetsu Suzuki, and he was talking about how human beings are social. So even if a person were to have a deeply spiritual experience, there would be a compelling impetus that's like force to make a person want to share that because we are social first and foremost. That's in the most beautiful sense. But even in things like victimization and crime, it's still a form of socializing, and it requires certain pretext, context, and justification, because even a person who is an assailant, a victimizer, a bad acting, they're still yet possessed of a conscience. And on some level, they're aware of that. And so how they do something, leading into how they allow themselves to do something, how they're able to do something, and then also how they're able to cope with doing something. Because even people who commit atrocities and assail other people, they yet have to cope with it because they still yet did witness that degree of violence, even if they were the one employing it. So a person uses a gun against another person, you think that they were intentional about all the things they were going to do to a person with that gun, but sometimes they've never actually seen a gun do to someone what that gun is about to in doing to someone. So they may yet be appalled by what they just did to someone with a gun, because that action is yet bigger than them, even though they were potentially an agent of that. There's a book on a dictionary philosophy that says that even in something like an assassination, there can be implications and profound questions about what had actually been cause and effect, what had a person actually done in that act, and what had been done for them or done by them or done to them. It is actually deep, and sometimes some things are actually bigger than us. Some things that happen to us are part of us yet bigger than us, and some things that we do to other people are part of us yet bigger than us, and that can be traumatic for on both the giving and receiving end of that. But it does yet require justification, context, and communication pretext at all points of that, including living with the conscience of that. So different things of violence, they require a relationship, even if having met for the first time. So if you observe the film Menace to Society, which is a very influential film in the United States, and I don't know if that's for better or worse, but it's just an influential film that is very violent. And in one scene, the main protagonist is beating, is viciously beating the family member of a woman who he has. He approached her in the first place because she wasn't looking for that with him, and he managed to impregnate her. And then he was in the process of abandoning her. And when he was confronted about that, he beat the family member. But as he's beating that family member, the family member appears helpless and is not putting up a fight. So there wouldn't be a justification or a pretext to continue to whoop him at that point. But then the main character is cussing at him and insulting him, which is sometimes you actually can't help but to react to an insult, whether or not you choose to. There's something of a reaction that is invoked and implied for you. So reaction reacts for you, whether you intend it to be. So if a person walks up to you and they truly insult you, you can't help but to react to that, because it's just the nature of the dynamic is that it draws force and it somewhat necessitates a reaction. In different times, like with cowboys and knights and stuff like that, they would call that like dropping the gauntlet. So like someone would throw down a gauntlet in front of a person, And it's such an act of disrespect that it necessitates and it almost demands and invokes by social and moral implications a response, and it draws a person into combat and fighting when it may not have been chosen by them. So the combat in the combat and fighting is chosen for them, and it does not suit them sometimes. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been engaged there. The book "Oh" by Daisetsu Suzuki, that's happened at different times in different cultures, and sometimes that would happen a lot, like in samurai, in cowboy culture, but also night culture of Europe, and also like with the dueling of cowboys, but also like samurais dueling. And so sometimes there's a story in there of a tea master who was traveling with his master, and he was nothing of a violent person, and he wasn't looking for violence with anyone, but a Ronin, that is a free and maybe not entirely trained but still very dangerous samurai who is not under discipline or oversight, has taken an interest in him. And I said in another video that something that takes an interest in you may not be in your best interest, especially as human beings are predators in the first place. I think that because we're omnivores, that means we have the potential to sustain ourselves as both herbivores and carnivores. It opens deception because we somehow think that humans are more noble than they actually are sometimes, or less lethal than they are. So it actually is a survival mechanism within human interaction, where it allows some of life actually does require manipulation. Even interacting is, according to Marlon Brando, all human socializing is actually a form of acting, and therefore is a form of manipulation. All human socializing is. And some people say that some of our actual mental capacity is a function of communication. We've developed our minds to this degree, not only for problem solving and reasoning, but for the problem solving and reasoning of socializing, which maybe inform all other purposes and outcomes of reasoning. And therefore, but when we do so, we're still acting to different degrees, because we're putting on expressions and interpreting expressions and not entirely congruent at all points of that. And so we're acting, and so we're manipulative. And maybe our ability to do such is because we're an omnivore, so we don't just look at all people just simply as predators. And then so that opens the footing for different forms of manipulation, but maybe also for lovemaking and loving and coming close enough to have family and friendships, is because we're omnivores like that. Um, but um, but um uh but so anything in an environment that's actually taking an active interest in you, as all things have a self-interest in the first place, it may likely be predation. So I've said that maybe some of these professionals who want to help us, who want to overhelp us, who always want to help something, maybe that's actually a clear example of predation, that they would be taking of all the things of our environment that could care less about us and want nothing to do with us, or at least not don't want to benefit us. Here comes this person with all this background, this much forethought and preconception and training that they've prepared for us, that they've trained on us, that they've leveled on us. Trained means pointed. That they, before they ever met us, they were getting ready for us, and now they have an opportunity, a client, a patient, a victim, to be interested in and engage and help. That is change. That is hurt. So I'm saying that might be similar to this Ronin in this example, but he actually insulted this man to such a degree that it insulted his master, and he was therefore forced to engage him in a lethal life and death exchange. But he survived it because a yet greater teacher commended him to lean into his background as tea, in the discipline of serving tea, as the exact attitude to approach this Ronin, and he survived because of that, because of what he already had in him, that a master taught him that he had in him in a short amount of training. But all I meant to say is that some things actually are so insulting that they actually necessitate, and they actually do the response. They do. It's such an insult that the insult does the getting offended for the person being offended by the insult. So that might be what's happening in the film Menace to Society, where he's beating the man. The man is helpless. The man is not putting up a fight. Yet he's further insulting him, which would, in a certain sense, at least spiritually, be forming a relationship of like a fight, like a give and take, like a banter back and forth. So now he has the pretext to continue to beat him. So he's using his own insulting of the man of he's beating, is giving him the leverage, the angle, and the standing to continue to beat him. So he just doesn't look completely wrong beating him. He looks a little bit less wrong as he's insulting him, and it kind of looks, it's presented as if it's cool in there, but it's the furthest thing from cool. And I think that's similar to a lot of the popular media, where we're being insulted and leveled with the N-word as we're being reared in a society where we may potentially be brutalized.